got Jesse with BlightBreed TCG. This is a TCG that has been on Kickstarter before. They've had a presence for a while now, and they are actually about to launch a new Kickstarter in November. And Jesse and I are going to kind of talk about the game a little bit, its journey so far, and tell you everything you kind of need to know about BlightBreed, and talk a little bit about the upcoming Kickstarter. So you want to just kind of maybe give me a little bit of background on what BlightBreed is? I will tell you, I got in a long time ago on the very first Kickstarter. I actually
Our
have some,
sample set.
yeah,
Yeah.
I got some of sample packs, and I couldn't get them out in time for this interview because they're tucked away in a binder, and I've got stuff kind of disorganized right now. But
No, that's fine.
that was a really cool project, and I saw like I kind of lost track of it a little bit. I know y'all been on Instagram still. Y'all had another Kickstarter that did not fund, and now you're coming back for another Kickstarter. So why don't you just kind of
Yeah.
introduce the game and tell us a little bit about your journey so far and what we're kind of looking ahead to?
Yeah, sure. Besides me turning into a hybrid myself, I really need a shave. Um, so yeah, essentially, I conceptualized the actual story for Blightbreed when I was about 16 or 17. So what's that? About 12,
Oh, cool.
13 years ago now. Um, and I didn't do much with it. I wrote a bit of lore here and there with it, and then I started developing the idea a lot more in my 20s. And then I thought it'd be a really good idea to actually do like make a TCG. I know a lot of people, a lot of creators kind of, and there's nothing bad about this at all. Kind of jumped onto creating a TCG because
Hmm.
indie TCGs were blowing up. They were becoming very popular. People were backing projects, and there was a massive scene, and it still is quite big. It has died down a lot, but it's still there.
It still seems to be kind of chugging along at any rate.
It's still
Still
chugging along,
seeing
and
new
I think
projects. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I think we're really in that phase now where I don't think indie TCGs will ever kind of go back to the how there was nothing really coming out back in the mid to late 2000s, even like late 2010s, in terms of new
Yeah.
TCGs other than like the big established ones already. But I mean, we can get into that soon. So yeah, Blightbreed basically was conceptualized when I was a teenager, and then I wrote the story and stuff. And then in mid 2021, I started dabbling in the idea of actually like writing the story and like actually publishing a book. And I moved to Japan in late 2019, and then we all know what happened with the big C, and the whole world basically shut down.
Yeah.
And I was, teaching English, and I really disliked
Oh,
my
cool.
job. Visiting Japan is amazing. Living here is not as good.
Mhm.
But it's still a great place to live. Don't get me wrong. It's still a very great country to live. But the pay isn't great, and you don't get treated the best at most companies, especially as a foreigner. And I wanted to
Wow.
do something else, and I actually was getting back into Pokemon, and I realized since I was no one here, I had access to all this Pokemon product that wasn't being bought by anyone because, the whole world was essentially shut down, and then Pokemon kind of blew up again. And
Mhm.
I basically started my own Pokemon business. I ended up getting a few
Oh,
large
cool.
clients that would buy a certain amount of cards with me every week, like raw cards. And I ended up being able to quit my job after about 2, 3 months of actually doing that.
Wow.
And so I worked really hard at doing that, building up, a customer base and getting the best product I can and exporting product, as I was
Mhm.
essentially the only foreigner. It was mostly back to Australia because if you can't already tell, I'm Australian by my
Okay.
accent. Um, and there was essentially no one here, like no foreigners. So I was able to get my hands on basically all sorts of product in mass amounts, and it was a good time, and I saved a lot of money. And then in mid 2021, I wanted to kind of branch out. My business was still going well. I was still having a good time, but I wanted to, I've always been a creative kind of person, and
Mhm.
I kind of got into MetaZoo a little bit there when it first kind of came out. I got into Flesh and Blood in very late 2020, and I started already dabbling in indie TCGs well before the boom, and then I
Mhm.
got into MetaZoo when it came out a little bit. I bought some product here and there, and I didn't back their Kickstarter, but I bought a lot of product. I just found out about it just after their Kickstarter, so I was
Yeah, I got in
fortunate
on
enough.
that around the first edition launch.
Right, yeah. So
Hmm.
I got in like around the first edition launch as well, but like in between their Kickstarter and the first edition launch.
Okay.
So I was able to get Kickstarter product at a very good price still.
Oh,
And
wow.
I didn't expect anything of it. I just thought it was cool. I liked the idea of the cryptids and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I was just buying like basically like Kickstarter booster boxes and stuff and opening them, thinking nothing of it.
Yeah,
Right.
that first set was amazing. It was very attractive.
It was a very good set. Now I think
Yeah.
that and Nightfall. I don't know.
Yeah.
They're going to be
Yep.
difficult sets to top. But but yeah, so I was opening Kickstarter products like it was nothing because it wasn't cheap, but it wasn't like what did Kickstarter
Mm,
boxes go up to? I don't even know. I don't really care about price too much, but yeah, it,
yeah.
it became ridiculous, and I was like, oh man, I opened all my product, but I and then it kind of like dawned on me like, hey, I should turn BlightBreed into a TCG. Um, who doesn't like awesome, badass, cute, even some, sexy human animal hybrids,
Right.
um, the community, like it wasn't, you know, people always give this bad kind of notion, bad, how do I put this? Like they always say like, oh, you know, tease furries kind of thing, like, oh, they call it a furry game, or it's a
Hmm.
furry game, and stuff like that. But I never saw it
I haven't
like
heard
that.
that
And
before. That's some kind of pejorative term like fantasy game or
Furries are
or
like a community of people that are like of individuals
oh,
that are like a
furries.
group of
I thought you
furries.
said
Yeah,
fairy. Sorry, I know what you're
yeah.
talking about.
Sorry, my accent, my thick
No, that's okay.
Australian accent. I still haven't lost it. Living in, I mean, they don't speak English here, but yeah, not really. So yeah, so everyone, I didn't even think of it as a like a furry
Hmm,
sort of thing or like a furry
hmm.
thing, but then
Yeah, I
everyone
didn't get
started
that
going.
vibe actually myself.
No, and I,
Like,
I I actually used to get really defensive about it, but then I kind of just took it on board, and I just roll with it now. Yeah, sure. If it's a furry game
yeah.
to you, you think it's a furry game, it's a furry game.
Yeah.
And
I used to get kind of combative sometimes early on my YouTube days, like, people trolling or saying negative comments. And you just kind of realize like there are just going to be people out there no matter what you do that you can't really, you know, change or defend. You just kind of move on and, you know,
oh yeah,
not
definitely,
worry about it,
definitely,
you know?
definitely. Oh, it's the last 2.5 years, it has really tested my I guess my patience and my actual ability to cope with some things. But yeah, it's been a good 2.5 years of Blightbreed, but
You get a thick skin.
yeah, you do get thick skin from it eventually. Yeah. At first it was very, very difficult because I wasn't used to kind of, it's not like you're famous or anything, but you are in the public
Mm,
eye because people are interested in the product that you're creating. And
mm,
it can get difficult being in the public eye, even just to that little extent of,
yeah.
a few thousand people, and
Mm,
it can, if you're not used to it and you haven't really, experienced something like that before, it can get
mm,
quite overwhelming at first, but you do get used to it and you do learn how to deal with it. And yeah, but
yeah.
so,
It,
um,
for
yeah, and
me
then,
looking at the, like, go ahead.
oh, no, no, you go. I was just
Yeah,
gonna
I was
say
just gonna
how.
say, like, it was interesting that, pejorative comment about it because when I looked at the game, the attraction to me was, I don't know how old you are, but like kind of growing up, I had like Bloody Roar. There was that fighting game for PlayStation where like
I
you
remember
had
you wrote a
it-
comment on one of our YouTube videos, I think,
yeah.
or yeah, that
And
saying it
I don't
remind
know if you're
was that.
familiar with that game. There were like 3 or 4 of those games, and your characters all had a specific animal they could transform into while fighting. That was a cool series. I don't think you'd
Yes.
ever see something like that rebooted because it's just not like, Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat or anything. But it reminded me of
Right.
that, and then I thought about like Animorphs. I don't know if you ever read those books
Oh yeah, of
growing
course,
up.
Animorphs, and there was a
Yeah,
TV show as well, which is super corny now, but at the time as a kid, I loved.
yeah.
Well, as a
And
young,
you had, to get some gargoyles vibe. So, I mean, I get it. That's
yeah.
the kind of thing that people just kind of grew up with. This idea of
Mm.
transformations and Power Rangers and Transformers. Beast Wars. It all is kind of in that same
Yeah, it
kind of
is.
realm, I
Bloody
think.
I
So
I do know Bloody Raw. I haven't played it or anything, and I haven't really looked too much into it, but when you mentioned Bloody Raw, I have heard of Bloody Raw, and I do know it has to do with, like, human and animals and stuff like that.
yeah, but your
Like,
game, it's the they don't transform into these
n
humanoid creatures.
no, no,
They're
that
like
that
different clans, right, of animal
so,
hybrids. So
yeah, so before I get onto, like, a little bit of the lore, I don't wanna ruin too much because there's massive twists in it, and the story is
okay,
huge, and it goes on, like, it could probably be 4, 5, 6 books. that's how.
I'm
Yeah,
loving that there's any
yeah.
emphasis on lore at all so far. So that's great.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't like one thing that people have brought up a lot, especially in like third-party discords and stuff like that, is that we haven't kind of shared too much lore. But it's not because we don't want to. It's not because that there isn't lore. It's just that we don't want to ruin anything because with so anyway, well, before I get to that, yeah, so just to finish off how I started BlightBreed is I actually
Yeah,
said to a
go ahead.
friend of mine who I met through basically selling Pokemon from Japan, exporting from Japan and stuff like that. I just said to him one day, look, I'm going to start a TCG. I've saved up money. I'm going to put a lot of my own money into it. Do you want to start it up with me? And he's still my friend. We're not as close as we used to be, but he's still my friend. And he was kind of like interested in the idea. He's like, yeah, I could do it. And then I started getting really into it, and I started like breaking it down, how it's going to work, what it's going to be about. And I was like, I got BlightBreed. It wasn't called BlightBreed at the time. I didn't really have a name for what it was when I first conceptualized it until I started working on the TCG. And then I was like, oh, I've got this story that is based on human animal hybrids, and they actually have tournaments like fighting tournaments in the actual world of Blightbreed. So I think it'd be like perfect for a TCG style game because they actually have like these basically these dual these fighting tournaments. And then he eventually said to me, look, I think you're very serious about this. I can't get that serious about it because, I've got like other priorities. I've got he has a TCG business as well, and he's got a family and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I'm still going to go for it. And then there was one point there before I even spent any money on it where I was like, man, am I really going to make a TCG? Like, what am I doing? Like, am I really going to do this? Like, I've been wanting to do something creative for a very long time. Like, I've played in a band. I've toured in a band. We released an album and stuff, and I've always dabbled in making content and stuff. So I've always been kind of very creative, and I knew, I wanted to get into some sort of creative outlet now that I'm able to. I did work a lot with the exporting and stuff like that. It's not like it was super simple. It was still a lot of work, but I did have a lot of free time as well at points where I was like, I want to get into like maybe a hobby or even into like creating like some sort of something creative essentially.
Mhm.
And then that's where I just went all in basically on Blightbreed. And I think I spent about $30,000 before
Wow.
we even launched the first Kickstarter out of my own pocket, $30,000 on art and on promoting it and just getting it out there. And yeah, so I spent a lot of my own money out of my own pocket, and I was essentially the only one working on it at the time. I was doing everything. I was getting all the essentially the commissions for the art, building the game by myself, like the gameplay, conceptualizing the game and conceptualizing the characters and all that kind of stuff, and dealing with the artists, dealing with the printing companies for like our test cards, which we had. And I was dealing with it all, the Instagram, the Discord server, all of it. And I did have one
Mm.
helper at the time. That was helping a little bit here and there as well, but it was essentially 90% of it was basically me. Um, and yeah, and then I realized like this seems very popular. People seem to really like this. I don't really have the funds to keep going by myself, so I need to do something. If I want this to become a reality, I need to actually do something to be able to, make it a reality. And that's where and then by this point, I actually had a kind of a loose team on board, right? I had a couple of people on board, and they were great help. I won't mention names or anything like that, just in case they
Mhm.
don't want me to. But they were a great help, and I thank them very very much. They know who they are. The very very early first kind of team members of Lightbreed, and even some people from the community that helped. And there was one particular person that helped me that basically helped me build the Kickstarter for the sample set. And at the time, um, with the sample set, you know, the the main critique that we get at the moment is that our sample set was too expensive. But I realized that it was quite pricey. But people like I think what a lot of people forget is that you need to be able to make money as well to be able to continue it. You can't just fund enough to be able to get the product out, because sure, you got the product out, but then you don't have any funds to continue the game, which is, you know, um, it's kind of like a catch 22. So we try to keep it as cheap as we could for the sample Kickstarter, which actually blew up and did really way like
Mhm.
it blew my mind. Like none of us expected it to blow up to what it did. But I think to date, I'm not saying this out of like pride and arrogance, but to date, it's still, you know, the most successful, if I'm correct, the most successful sample TCG Kickstarter to date, even now, because there's been quite a few sample Kickstarters now for
Yeah.
TCGs. But
And I lost
yeah,
I lost track a little bit on the different sets that you have already done. So I know I got in on your first Kickstarter, and I guess those were, I think I got some sample packs I think that I opened. I had some Jules cards I think that I might have bought I think
people
on the
love
secondary
Jules.
market.
Fan
Yeah.
favorite. Fan
Great
favorite.
character. And I like the
Mm.
art redesign too. I followed saw on your Instagram.
Yeah, oh, that's right. Yeah, and
Yes. So you're
yeah,
doing
we
some revamps to the art. So it looks like so you're doing some kind of gradual changes and evolutions of the game going forward. And I think your second Kickstarter, I just completely missed it. I think I just wasn't paying attention or something and just
there was
like found out about it after the fact. I don't remember what happened with
yeah.
that.
So okay, so there was a couple of reasons our main Kickstarter, I call it the main Kickstarter because it was for the first main set, and this Kickstarter coming up is actually essentially the same Kickstarter that didn't fund. It's still for our first main set. But the
Oh,
reason
oh, so it's the same one. I see.
it's the same one,
It's
yeah. So
except for
it's
maybe a
still
few changes or something. Okay.
there's been like design revamps and everything and lots of
Gotcha.
changes, and we're rebuilding
Yeah.
our designer, Jenny, who's absolutely amazing, and she's been on board since basically the beginning. She's been the one that's been designing. Um, all the cards you see is her design. I'm not saying the
Okay.
art, but all the card designs you see and the logos and all that kind of stuff is all her. And she's been on board since essentially day one. Like she wasn't a direct team member at the time, but I was paying her to do design work and
Okay.
stuff like that. So essentially, yeah. And then she eventually joined the team, but what happened was a very big TCG launched on we had no idea, the whole team had no idea, launched on exactly the same day as our main Kickstarter, and this TCG was getting hyped up for months and months and months prior, and I honestly
Okay.
just was buckled down working so hard that I just had no idea. And I found
Hmm.
out literally the night prior to us having to launch that this TCG was also launching the next day, and I was just like, oh
Wow.
no. And it was and we only had like 170 pre-launch followers. So
Hmm.
the sad reality was that our team kind of fell apart, right? So Blightbreed's main set, the main Kickstarter at the start of this year, I think back in February, yeah, I think February or March, didn't fund. It's not because it was a bad product or because it's a bad product, because I could be biased, but I truly think that Blightbreed's something special and
Hmm.
an amazing game and amazing collectible item in general. But it didn't fund because there was just so much happening at the time. There was a lot of scams that just kind of had already happened at that time, like, and it was really fresh in people's
Gotcha.
minds. So people were very weary for a very long time, and they still
Hmm.
are very, very weary. Um, and it was just a bad time. Our whole team literally quit. It was just me and Jenny, my designer, Blightbreed's designer, and it was just basically me and her doing this set. And it was
Hmm.
it was a very, very difficult time, and it was, yeah, it's sad to talk about, but I we we were close to giving up a few times. Just we're human, and seeing that, we thought the industry was, basically on the brink of collapse, which it kind of did have a semi
Man.
collapse. Um, the indie TCG scene, sorry, and
Yeah.
it was a sad time. It was a difficult time, and it was, yeah, we were very, very very close to basically throwing in the towel, and
Man.
but
It,
I'm very
it,
persistent. I'm very
yeah.
prideful sometimes, and I was like, "Nah, I'm not giving up on Blightbreed. This is my baby. This is our baby. I've put in way too much money. I've put in way too much work, and I don't want to let the community down that did back us, that did have faith in us.
Mm.
We're going to get a team together again. We're going to buckle down, and we're really going to hone in on this and make this the best game we possibly can." And then, yeah, after that, basically, in between then and now, a lot has happened, and I am
Mm.
so glad that myself and Jenny, the designer, and then the people that came on board, not too long after the failed Kickstarter, actually stuck around and are still there. Same people still, for the most part, and stuck around and helped us, and helped BlightBreed and to bring it to what it is now. And it's getting more and more popular every day, and more people are liking it. And I think it's got a very positive aura, if I can say, around it now, compared to
Yeah.
the beginning of the year, where everyone was just very, very bearish on every single new,
Yeah.
almost every single new indie TCG launching.
It's interesting how there's so much collective sentiment, it seems like, in the space, and with big TCGs and small TCGs alike, because you do kind of feel it in the air. Like we had this time with Kickstarter TCGs where projects were just getting hundreds of thousands of dollars, like just crazy amounts of money,
It
and
was crazy.
then like
Even our
you would
sample
start to
Kickstarter, yeah,
just, and then you would just see all of a sudden it's like, I guess some of the controversies and different projects, like it just there is a kind of collective mood around it. I would It
mm,
kind of feels like things are kind of stabilized now. Like you've had the kind of the boom and then the bust, and now it's just kind of like a thing that people kind of, follow whichever projects they like. It kind of feels that way a little bit to me. I mean, I'm sure there's more complexities to it then, but I remember just my personal experience with BlightBreed. I did the first Kickstarter. I just completely there was a time where I felt burned out on Kickstarter TCGs and just wasn't paying attention anymore.
oh,
And it
me
might
too.
have
I
just
was the
been
same. Yeah, I was
I
backing
because
many
I remember
projects
being
too.
like, wait, there was another one, and then
Mm.
and then I only recently found out when I started following you all again because I thought it was like I just hadn't heard about Blightbreed in a while,
We
and then
the reason, yeah, a lot of
yeah,
people actually, that's it's interesting. Sorry to cut you off there. I
no,
don't
go
mean to
ahead.
be rude.
There's a
But
good
it's interesting.
conversation.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, because a lot of people thought that BlightBreed basically was gone, right? I remember very vividly making. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, so hopefully I remember. I remember very vividly. I guess it was quite a while ago. It's almost a year ago now. But basically saying, um, look, Blightbreed's not going anywhere, even though our main set Kickstarter has essentially not funded. And it's funny though, because even though the scene was kind of dead, the indie TCG scene, and this other very hyped up, it's a very nice game that was coming out on the same day. I'm not going to mention the game because I don't want to start any drama or anything like
Sure,
that.
that's
So there's
fine.
no point. I was just
Yeah.
saying it's a very kind of hyped up game, and people really like it. And the art is gorgeous. The cards are gorgeous. I'm not sure on the gameplay. I've never played it. Haven't really heard much about it, but
Mhm.
it's a very gorgeous game, and it was hyped up for a very long time, right? So considering that we launched on the same day, you know, as this crazy hyped up TCG, and considering how the scene was going at the time, and considering how people were feeling towards Blightbreed at the time through preconceived, I don't know, thoughts that kind of weren't that aren't real, that people have these preconceived notions sometimes. Rumors spread that are false, and a lot of the time the rumors that spread are actually not true. They're false, not just with Blightbreed but in general. I'm not
Hmm.
saying all rumors are false, but yeah, a lot of rumors
Yeah.
that spread are just simply like just generally false information, as I've come to realize, being in the scene for 2.5 years now. But
Especially when you enter a bear market and people can be very negative and
exactly, yeah. And
so.
but it's surprising you bring that up, because even though that other Kickstarter launched, and we only had, like, it sounds like quite a few numbers, but we only had like 170 pre-launch followers. And for those that don't know what a pre-launch follower is basically you have your Kickstarter page up before you launch it.
Mhm.
You can see the banner, and it just has like a small description on what it is, and you can click a notify me on launch button, and basically when it launches, you get an email. So we only had 170 pre-launch followers, which sounds like a decent number, but it's actually not that much, because from your
Hmm.
pre-launch, not everyone's going to back. Quite an overwhelming majority of your actual pre-launch followers probably won't end up backing, or if they do, they will
Maybe they
probably
just
end
want to
up.
follow it and see what
They
it
want to, yeah, they
ends up
want to
looking
follow and
like
see
and how
what's
much
going
money
on.
comes
Yeah,
in. Yep.
and it's
I
free to
understand
follow,
that.
so you
Or
just go,
think
okay,
about it,
let's click.
kind of
Yeah,
just see what it's going to look like.
yeah, I'll see where it goes. I'll see, how much,
Yeah.
interest there is overall. And some people, just want to, as you said, just want to see how it goes. And
Mm.
it's easy just to click that button, notify me on launch.
Yeah.
Which, so yeah, so we had a, and with the 170 pre-launch followers, which isn't very good for the people that don't know. Like I said, it sounds like a big number, but it's actually not. It's actually a very small number, especially when you're trying to fund a main set, or like a main product. And with the whole indie scene at the time, and with that very hyped up game
you're
launching on the
talking.
same day. 170 followers, as I said, might seem like a lot, but it's actually not that much at all. And with that big game dropping on the same day, which we didn't actually know about, and with the whole indie scene at the time and the negativity surrounding it, we actually almost funded that set, almost funded. But, you know, it was devastating at the time that it didn't fund because it was so close to funding. It wasn't far off. But, I mean, when I say so close to funding, I think it was like 60 or 70% funded, which is still pretty, you know, it was a 50,000 USD funding goal, and we got about 60 to 70% of the way there from, you know, not, you know, with all the drama going on around it, but we still
Yeah.
almost funded. But in the end, I believe the Kickstarter for our main set, Convergence, which is still called Convergence, our first set. It is the alpha variant of Convergence, which is the only way to get it is through the Kickstarter campaign, and it was like that back then, and it's like that now as well. Just to put that out there. But I think it's a blessing in disguise that it didn't fund, because now I believe we have a much better looking product. We have a much more solid team, a much more solid foundation, and the gameplay has not been revamped, but the gameplay has been, the aspects of it have been very, very, very well polished, a lot more polished since then. The game has been playable for the last year and a half or so. It's been playable. It's even playable with the sample set. There's some cards, that you will need to be able to play, but we offered like print and play kits for the individuals or the people that wanted to, play
You have
with
a
the sample
tabletop
set.
sim.
Yeah, and then we ended up making the tabletop simulator. Yeah, so the game's been completely playable for the last year and a half, particularly on Tabletop Simulator. And excuse me, eventually we had a gameplay designer jump on board. Not like a professional gameplay designer, but he has designed a lot of games in his life. He's worked on a lot of games. He's done a lot of rule books. His name is Archer. He is absolutely fantastic. He is an absolute genius when it comes to gameplay design. So he he jumped on board. Jenny, our designer, actually found him in a random Discord, like this random homemade TCG Discord, and she basically posted our TTS in there and our rule book. And Archer actually was the one that chimed in and said, "Oh, your rule book's kind of confusing. I'll be happy to, rewrite your rule book for so and so amount." It was a very cheap amount. He was willing to do it. He just enjoyed doing that kind of stuff. So it's very cheap.
Cool.
We actually didn't end up doing that. I mean, we did get the rule book done, but told Jenny to actually tell him to inbox me, and he inboxed me, and I asked him, "Hey, how are you with gameplay? Would you like to come play the BlightBreed, tabletop simulator and have a look at the game for yourself?" And then he joined the Discord, and he didn't realize how, and I put in parentheses big, because it's, by no means, worldwide big, but how big BlightBreed actually was. And he joined because he's so used to like these homemade TCGs where,
Yeah.
they don't really have a following at all. And he joined, and he was like, "Oh wow, this game is quite established." And I invited him onto the team, and I said, "Hey, look, do you want to join the team? Do you want to be, our lead gameplay designer and our, rulebook, basically our rulebook writer, and you can update the rulebook in the future and stuff going forward?" And he was more than happy to jump on. He's like, "Yep, I want to jump on board.
Awesome.
This is amazing. This is kind of this is my niche. This is my expert. This is what I'm kind of an expert in." And
Yeah.
yeah, I'd be more than happy to join. And then that's how we got the gameplay fully fleshed out in literally. It was already fleshed out before, but like
Mhm.
smoothed out, and got rid of, fixed many things that could have potentially been an
Mhm.
issue, and added some things and removed some things. And yeah, and the game is really actually phenomenal. And um, I think now, I mean, it's always been important to me. I've always kind of said it from the start when Blightbreed was first ever shown off publicly that, look, we are not a hype game. We're not a game built on hype. We don't want to be a game built on hype. If we do get hype, that's, I guess that's just a
Mm.
plus, but we are not out to try and get hype. We're out here, well, I'm out here to create an awesome game with some awesome art and some crazy awesome characters. I'm not here to try and hype up a game and you know, make all the money in the world. And basically just that sort of area of it. It's still collectible. We still try to,
Right.
you know, cater towards the collectors. I think it's a very important balance because there are realistically more collectors than there are players. So we try to keep a nice balance on the collectability and the playability. So we don't want to waste any card. So even if we have a highly exclusive card or a very limited card, generally what we will do is we will still have that card in the set, but the art will be different for the very exclusive collectible version. But it will still have the same
Yeah.
abilities. So you're not basically shut out from using that card because you couldn't get it because there was only 10 copies you could get.
Right.
Um,
It's interesting to think about the playing versus collectability aspect because, like, I know there are people who are hardcore and like to try a lot of different games and play games a lot. But for me, from my perspective, like, to be honest, a lot of games could be completely unplayable and broken and just, like, look like a playable trading card because
yeah,
I
there's
I
a
just
lot. It's a
I
lot
just
like that
never
too.
can sit down in my life to play any new games, and, for me, it's all about just the art, the lore, the concept of the game, like, for example, with your game, um, just the whole hybrid system, and, I've already talked about how it kinda takes me back to these kind of, like, Transformers, Beast Wars, Bloody Roar, all these kinds of
Mm,
games. Growing up, Gargoyles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles,
gargoyles. I remember
yeah,
gargoyles. Yeah,
just different kinds of like cool animal creatures, right? And you don't see that in other kinds of games at the moment, and I like
there
the
are a
art of it
couple,
and the
but not
design
not
and the
like
concept. So
yeah. There
so
are a
for me,
couple,
the
but not
collectability
solely
is so
focused on.
important, right?
Mm.
That's what I'm trying to get
Yeah.
at.
No, I agree. I agree. Like, look, I came from a collectability background. Like I said, I was exporting Pokemon cards, not
Yeah,
because people were playing with them, but because people
yeah,
were, buying them off me in bulk for a very, very good price. I was offering very good prices because even with, my Pokemon exporting business, I wanted to give
mm,
people the best product and best price that I could,
yeah,
so they could get something out of it as well. But when it came to BlightBreed, I realized I can't just go in here, and expecting people just wanting to collect it. If we're going to succeed with BlightBreed, we need to also have a really good game around it, right?
yeah. I understand that.
I want it to be collectible. Don't get me wrong, because I'm a major collector myself. Like I don't really play TCGs. I'm not a huge TCG player. There's a couple that I do like, even some indie TCGs. But if we're talking about bigger TCGs, I not so much anymore. But I used to play a lot of Pokemon, particularly the online Pokemon on the app or the computer. Um, the Pokemon Online. I used to play that a lot. I remember being, 19, 20, early 20s and buying 300 code cards from when they used to come in the booster packs. And I don't know if they still do in English. I haven't opened an English booster pack in a very long time. With Blightbreed, we kind of have this thing where no card, even if it's a common or just an uncommon or just an uncommon, every card is playable, right? We want every card to be playable. We don't want there to be a card that isn't playable in one way or another. So I really
Oh,
like
like just
Pokemon. I
trash
think
cards, like, oh, no one's gonna play that card because it's too
yeah,
weak or
exactly. We
something
we
like that.
don't
Yeah,
want that. I'm sure once we start having more cards and stuff, and probably even with the main set, there might be a couple of cards that people probably won't ever use or very sparingly. But for the most part, we really want Blightbreed to be a game where every single card has a relevancy in one way or another in a deck. Because as a game, Blightbreed is a deck builder. Um, I say this a lot, like because when people ask like what type of game is Blightbreed, usually I just say, look, play the tabletop simulator. There's a rule book here. If you want to play, I'm happy to personally play with you as well, and we can have a chat and I can talk to you through it. Or here's some videos, like I linked you. I said, look, here's some
hmm,
gameplay if you want to have a look.
yeah,
For the people that are wanting the gameplay, because I think it's an interesting thing because collectors, even though they're solely collectors, they don't really play the game. They still want the game to be good because they know if the game is good, the game's going to last
yeah.
and the collectability will last. and it could the value will continue to increase, especially for the earlier product. But we were never, overly focused on, I've never been overly focused on the secondary market for BlightBreed or, any TCG other outside of the big main ones.
Mm.
But I realized, very early on that I need to make a good game, and then we need to make a good game once we had a team and stuff. Because for BlightBreed, we want to appeal to collectors very, very much so. But we also want to appeal to the people that play the game, and we realize that you need a good game there, at
Mm.
least a semi good game there for it to continue onwards. Because if you don't have a game, or you
Yeah.
act like you have a game but you don't really have one, people are going to realize that very, very fast, and it's going to bring a very negative impact onto your brand, onto your TCG, if you don't have a game. Because the point of a
Yeah.
TCG these days is for it to be a game, right? Unless it's
Certainly
solely a
from my
CCG.
perspective as primarily a collector, that's certainly something I take for granted, and you hope that other people will take the time to play it and put out a good word for its gameplay. I think Lorcana kind of got lucky, not lucky, but there's a positive side to that when that came out, because from what I look at it, it kind of looks like Magic the Gathering a little bit, but it has some of its own
Just
characteristics
Disney.
too. But I think people allow it to get away with that because it's like, oh, Disney plus Magic, that sounds cool. Whereas I feel like if an indie Kickstarter came out and was like too much like Magic, people were like, kind of
Yeah,
more critical of that. So
well, I mean, there's especially early on, not so much anymore, but even now, I've realized a lot of the indie games coming out are essentially a twist on Magic. They're basically a twist on MTG, which is um,
Well, I
which
think
look,
MTG gets a lot of maybe universally good design mechanics maybe right too from the
or
get-go,
MTG is one of
like
the best.
tapping your
Like,
card sideways, it's like there's what other way better way is there to visually show a card is being activated?
no, I agree, but you don't really hear that a lot with an indie game where people are like, I just really want to play the game. Come on, let's play. Where with Blightbreed, a lot of people are like, well, I really want to play this game. Like, I can't wait to play
Cool.
this game. It's very so. I haven't really said this before, but I haven't played too many TCGs. So I've played. I used to play Pokemon a lot, like I said. I played a little bit of Yu-Gi-Oh. I can't remember because I was young, and I've played a bit of MTG. I'm not a master, I'm probably not even intermediate. I'm still very much a beginner, but I know
Yeah.
how to play the game.
I never
Um,
had a chance to learn Yu-Gi-Oh, but I like Pokemon and Magic. I think they both have very good systems that are also very different from each other, which is very interesting.
yeah, and what's interesting to me, right, is I think Pokemon in general is a good game in theory, but practically it doesn't work all the time, like in practice. But
Okay.
I think it is a good game in general, right? Otherwise, well, I mean, it's got a massive IP behind it these days, but
Yeah.
I think it wouldn't have survived basically it was almost dead in the mid 2000s. Like, it almost died. Like, it was pretty much dead. Like, it was almost
Hmm.
on it was essentially on the cuff of it dying out, like the TCG aspect of Pokemon. Kickstarter launches on the 7th of November. We have a lot of
Okay.
pre-followers already. We're almost at 1,000 pre-followers as of us
Yeah, I
talking
saw
here.
that on there. It was
Um,
a lot more than last time, your previous
like
projects.
times 8 the amount of last time. We almost
Yeah.
funded last time, so
Man.
I'm very confident in this Kickstarter, not just because of the pre-followers and
Mhm.
all that kind of stuff, but because it's very awesome. It's very great. The game is great. The art is great. The clans are awesome. The hybrids are awesome, and the product is awesome. So, talking about the product, yes, there's going to be 2 pre-constructed decks. There's
Okay.
going to be high impact and fusion focus, which is a full deck of basically everything you need to play the game, right?
Okay.
Right off the bat, so you don't need to worry about opening, like, if getting all the cards together. Boom, there's the deck right there for you. All the vials, all the adrenalines. There's something in the game called adrenalines, which is like kind of effect
Okay.
cards that you can activate on your turn or activate as a defense out of turn. Um, so yeah, and it comes with everything. Will come with an alternate art clan leader, both theme decks. The high impact theme deck is based on Harper's Rabbit Clan, and the
Cool.
fusion focused theme deck is based on Charles's clan, Charles's Wolf Clan. And
Awesome.
they will both come with a Alpha Convergence random booster pack as well, and
Cool.
damage counters and a coin, because to determine who goes first, you have to coin flip. Um, And
Okay.
then, yeah, so there's 2 theme decks. There's going to be booster boxes, obviously. Each booster box comes with 24 packs. They're going to come with a box topper, which guarantees you a clan leader,
Nice.
because you need a clan leader to play. So each booster box will guarantee you a clan leader. There's also going to be ultra rare alternate version arts. There's going to be approximately 1 per booster box. If you get really lucky, you might get 2. But the ultra rares don't have different abilities. They are just based on hybrids in the set with a different art, with a different crazy art, but they have the same move set as the standard art version. Just
Awesome.
to make that clear.
Yeah.
Same with the clan leaders. They all the clan leaders have an ultra rare variant, but the move set is exactly the same as the standard rare variant. So it
Cool.
appeals to collectors and game and
Good.
the
Yeah.
players. We didn't want to segregate any of them. We didn't want to make it so it's pay to win.
Yep.
But we wanted to give a good chase for the collectors, and we also wanted to make it very easy for the players,
Awesome.
if they don't care about worry too much about the alternate arts, the URs. And there's also going to be something called a hidden rare, which is going to be probably like 1 per case, right?
Wow.
A hidden rare heroic hybrid, yeah. So it's going to be a chase card. There's not going to be like a set number, but it's going to be extremely rare to get, and that will be we're thinking about how to do that, whether to do that as an alternate art or a card in itself. But there's going to
Okay.
be many rogue hybrids in the set as well. A rogue hybrid is essentially a hybrid you can put into your deck, that doesn't belong to any clan. Because how it works is you get a full clan of 5, and then the other 5
Hmm.
hybrids you can choose randomly from any clan, just not another clan leader. And you can choose to have 1 rogue hybrid in your deck as well as 4 other hybrids. So yeah, 4 other hybrids from like different clans. Again, I'm getting ahead of myself. So yes, so booster boxes, pre-constructed decks. We actually
Okay.
have a partnership with Palms Off Gaming, which is Australia's biggest.
I saw the binder
Argue,
you did with them. That's what I'm familiar with that
yes,
name. Yeah, that is.
yes.
I love when y'all do like. I noticed you did like art print on your Instagram. Like I like seeing kind of like additional merch on top of cards. I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah. So we actually, I actually have. I won't show it now. I might show it in another video. But we had like a prototype binder made with Palms Off Gaming. But they are
Nice.
arguably Australia's biggest TCG merchandise company,
Okay.
right? So binders, folders, binders,
Mhm.
card sleeves, deck boxes, etc., etc., etc. They're
Okay.
really, really cool. They even make
Cool.
like a apparel now, apparel like shirts and jackets and
Nice.
stuff like that. And yeah, so we've had a massive PR, like crazy PR marketing for Convergence, and it's going really well.
Nice.
Our team has been really solid, and yeah, like booster boxes, pre-constructed decks. There's going to be something called a ancient relic box, which is going to come with some
Whoa.
pretty
That sounds
exclusive.
epic.
Yeah, it's going to come. I think it's going to be limited to either 500 or 1,000. Not sure yet, but probably about 500. And
Okay.
it's going to come with something, potentially something extremely special, which I won't delve into. I'll keep that as a secret for now. But it's called an
Cool.
ancient relic box. It's
Okay.
going to come with exclusive cards. It's going to come with so BlightBreed story expands over 5,000 years. Um,
Wow.
so into like 2083 when the story starts, but it actually technically started like 5,000 years prior, but I won't get into that because that's spoiler territory. But it's going to come with an ancient rogue hybrid promo, which will not be found in the Convergence set, and it's going to come with a pack which contains a full ancient hybrid clan. So you can
Nice.
use that ancient hybrid clan to play. So it's going to have the clan leader and the 4 clan members. So
Nice.
that's going to be the ancient relic box, which is an exclusive, awesome product. And then we're also going to have an LGS only tier. There's probably going to be about 30 to 50 spots, and there's going to be LGS exclusive promo packs, which I think there's going to be, I think it's 50. Don't it could change, so don't quote me
Hmm.
on that, but it might be, I think it's 50 LGS exclusive promo packs with like an exclusive card in it for people that come and physically into the store, that LGS store, and physically play the game. They'll be handed these for free,
Okay.
or whatever the LGS decides to do with them. There's going to be something called an Ultra Rogue pack, which is a pack of very, very, very limited booster pack of Rogue hybrids, that you can find in the main Convergence set, but they're going to be alternate arts, very gorgeous alternate arts. So there's going to be that. That's very exclusive. And yeah, I'm not going to ruin anything else. There's going to be some
Yeah.
more crazy product, but yeah, that's the Kickstarter that is launching on the 7th of November at 8 a.m.
Okay.
Eastern Standard Time,
All right. And I'll put a
which
bunch
is
of
a
links
Tuesday.
below the video as well, like the Instagram,
I'd
the
appreciate
Kickstarter
that.
follow page, and your main website as well.
That'd be
So
great. Yeah, yeah. Our main website needs a little bit of updating here and there, but it's been getting updated recently. It's a really
cool.
nice website. Yeah, I'd really appreciate that. Follow us on Instagram, join our
For
Discord.
sure.
It's a very nice community, and follow our pre-launch for the Kickstarter so we can get like a general interest,
Yeah.
general, how do I word this, to see the interest, like
Kind
how
of
much
idea
interest,
of
idea, like a
how many
general
people are
idea
following.
of yeah, how many people are following. That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
I
thank
know
you
I'm
so much,
always
Greg.
excited when I come in when the Kickstarter launch goes live, and you just go like, what are the new cards or art that I'm going to see, and see how it's all laid out. That's always
It's
very exciting to see. So and just
it's
scroll
it's
through, put a lot of
it's
info in there.
yeah, it's huge.
And I'm really looking forward to seeing the page. So thanks for being on the show and being on the channel and
Yeah, thank you for having
talking
me, and
about the
thank you to
game.
your
So
subscribers.
it's a real privilege to have you and
No,
to
it's a
hear
privilege to
all
be on
the
your channel. I've watched your
get a
channel,
behind
like,
the scenes look. So
yeah. Yeah, I've watched your channel quite a few times, and it's like really interesting and cool being
thank
here
you.
and
Yeah, I
talking to
appreciate
you.
it. It's
And
just fun for me. It's just, instead of me just buying, I get to make something and put something out there for someone else to
yeah,
consume. So if they enjoy
I'm
it.
I'm
So
yeah, I agree.
yeah.
And yeah, it's a
I
privilege
know
to
how
be
you
here.
feel about that making a game. So,
Yeah. It's
you got to
very
be creative.
it's very stressful, but you have to be creative, yes. And
Yeah.
but I wouldn't change it for the world. I love BlightBreed. It is my life. I'm trying to make it the best possible thing, as I said, for not just for myself, but for the team, and mostly the community as well. And
Awesome.
just the best possible thing. And anyway, yeah, I
Yeah.
won't ramble. Thank you so much for
No, it's
having
all
me.
good.
Thank you to your subscribers. Thank you to the people that watched all the way through. And
Yeah.
yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jesse. And hopefully maybe we can have you on it again another time. And we'll look
Definitely.
forward
I'm definitely keen to come on again. Yep.
to what's to come with Blightbreed.
Yeah, and we can also have like our market chats and stuff. That'd be cool
Yeah,
too.
that'd be cool.
I'm
For sure.
really into like markets and stuff like that, and talking
Yeah,
about
I enjoyed our
Pokemon. And
Pokemon conversation for
yeah,
sure.
I mean,
There's a
like I
lot to
said,
talk about. So
yeah, I've been doing it full time for 4 years, so I have a massive passion around that and
yeah,
TCGs in
awesome.
general. So I'm happy to talk about just not even Blightbreed or indie TCGs,
Yeah.
but like Pokemon and stuff like that as well. Yeah,
All right. Sounds good.
awesome.
Well, go get some sleep. I know it's past midnight over there.
Yeah, and you
I'm gonna
enjoy
go
your
get some
weekend. You
lunch.
enjoy your Saturday. Yeah, you enjoy your
All right.
Saturday. I haven't even had dinner yet. I should probably eat.
Yeah, that'd probably be a good idea. All right. Thanks a lot, Jesse.